All right, welcome back to another episode of the Ember podcast. Well, thank you guys for joining us once again on another week. I'm sorry about last week not having an episode. I was actually featured on another podcast for that episode instead, which is on my good friend Jelos and his podcast, the Dungeon Crawler Network. If you want to check it out, I'll have the link down below. For this week, though, we are going to be talking about PvP, everything that will be making combat and conflict awesome in the world of Ashes of Creation, the world of Vera. Today, my guests are my own guild members here. We got a returning guest here, Saint. Nerd, what's up? Say welcome.
What's going on, guys? How y'all doing? I'm happy to be back again.
Glad to have you back, man. All right, we got a new face here. We got Zoom. He's one of our newest members, one of our best members so far. Definitely vibing to be one of the most active members in the Discord currently. Why don't you just introduce yourself real quickly?
What's up, guys? I'm Zoom. Happy to be here, and pretty flattering, man.
All right. So we're going to get this started. We're going to be talking again about PvP, everything that makes it great and what we want to see in the world of Ashes. If this is your first time tuning into our podcast, this is a podcast. So we're going to be talking about what we'd like to see, what our passions are for this game, and kind of just sharing that. We'll also be sharing some information that we've picked up over time for the game. So if you are interested in the world of Ashes, this will be kind of one of the places to hear about it, okay? So the first topic today is action combat. So what would you guys say that you've played through that would be a really good example of action combat that you've enjoyed in an MMO, and why is that? Let's start off with Saint.
I was gonna say I'll let Zoom say it because we're probably both gonna say the same game.
Same thing, yeah.
Black Desert
Black
Online.
Desert, yeah.
Mhm.
They
Blade
did
and Soul
really
is a
good.
close second.
Blade and Soul is a close second, yeah. But Black Desert did a really cool thing with their combo system and how it worked and how you could alter it with different skill advancements, and then the awakening weapons, and that just changed PvP altogether. That was a whole nother thing that just shifted. We had to rethink our characters when awakened weapons came out. So like at the time I was playing a ninja, the awakened weapon came out, I re-rolled to berserker. So we had to, a lot of us had to change just because of PvP and how PvP was, and their action combat system really let us explore the different abilities and how we could, what worked, what didn't, what did more damage versus this, and it really let us explore. It was fun.
Oh yeah. All right, Zoom, what about you, man?
Definitely a lot of the same things. I'm really into learning animation cancels and combos and things like that because I grew up, Street Fighter and stuff.
Yeah.
And any MMO that I can play Street Fighter style fighting in, I'm all for it, And I started in, Blade and Soul as an assassin, platinum tier PvP, that was my thing. I would just sit there all day and thinking it was going to be like an esport, big, but they're more into PvE. One of the things that always killed me is they have these PvP missions in the world. You put on your uniform and you go out there and try to fight people, but they would get mad when you killed them because oh, I'm just trying to kill these NPCs, but I'm like, you're flagged for PvP, what? Right. So then Black Desert came out. Phenomenal. Love the open world thing, EVE Online, very cutthroat, and just you never know what you're gonna get. I love the challenge, just coming across different kinds of people. That skill is very fun.
And then that first time we all got fronked and dropped.
Yeah.
Because it's happened to everybody once.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
That's true.
There's always a bigger fish.
You're doing a quest, and all of a sudden you're dead. You go, what the heck?
I've had that happen maybe once or twice. I won't admit how many times.
Everybody has it once.
I can tell you in Blast Online, you'll be out in the middle of nowhere, and then all of a sudden just a whole squad comes through, and you're just, by myself.
Train.
So what would you say was bad about action combat that you've played in games? Like, what games have you experienced action combat that it wasn't good in that sense?
You can go first.
All right. So one thing about action combat, two things, and I mean, I don't believe this is specific to BDO. I mean, BNS had similar issues, especially since before it came out in NA, I was playing on a Taiwan server, but latency and lag, like action combat is very reliant on how your internet connection and where the server is located. They have a server way out in California. I'm here in Florida. So there's desync when you're fighting people. Sometimes that little, you'll just see them teleport. Well, not teleport,
stutter
but that stutter. Exactly.
Stutter step.
Like you think they're in one spot, they're really not. And then, registering, especially if they live closer to the server. And so that little fraction of a second, is the difference between life and death, especially if you're playing a class like a Sork, where it's very clutch. You have to be like 110% all the time. It's playing the game on hard mode, and so that's the one thing. Two is your computer graphics. During sieges, you'd have a bunch of different guilds with 100 guys going to siege on, a castle. And that's a lot of stuff to draw on a video card for your games. Even I have a 1080 Ti Strix. I have to turn everything on low spec mode. I cut any non-essential screen space I don't need. Otherwise, that graphical lag. And so it's very hard on a computer for like massive siege combat. But there's a lot of little tips to help it out, though.
Yeah, that's very true, man. What about you, Saint?
Well, a lot of what he was saying really vibes with me, because I didn't play Blade and Soul that much, but from what I played of it, I got that. But as far as like, there's not a lot, because for me, I'm the tap target guy. Yeah, I'm the tap target guy. I'm the devil's advocate. So
right.
For me, like the latency thing is huge. If you look up in certain games, like for example, League of Legends, if you look up League of Legends, a lot of people, they'll like the pros, they'll move closer to the servers. Right. They will relocate to be better at this game. Well, yeah. and that's like it, and you see the difference. You really do with that kind of latency and rubber banding issues and jumping around in PvP, because there are some games that are awful when it comes to this, like especially older games, especially if you jump into like EverQuest 2, for example, right now, which has PvP. It's awful because it's very laggy, it's very unbalanced, and that's something that degrades over time. So it'll be cool to see how they change PvP and evolve PvP in the long run, like 5 years from now maybe. But as far as what makes PvP or what makes action combat, the lag is really a big thing. That's true. People's reaction times. You're gonna have different reaction times across everybody, and that's gonna change a lot of things too. But that's a little more small. But
so I personally played a lot of top target MMOs. I haven't played a ton of the action combat ones. I did get into a little bit of BDO myself, and I actually really enjoyed the combat in that. It was very fluid, very different from most MMOs I've played in the past. But most of my PvP would definitely come from tab targeting. From my experience in BDO, though, like you're right, any kind of latency can really become frustrating. With a tab target system, that isn't noticed as much because you're guaranteed a hit. But like you're saying, with that you're likely to miss, especially if you're a melee character and you're trying to chase someone around. Like myself, I usually play like a ranger or a mage, so I'm always skirting. I'm always like kiting people, and I try my best to always stay away from them. So it's something that helps me out.
Fast. Gonna try to chase you,
right? So, with that being the case, what would you guys say? If Intrepid's looking at this podcast, and I hope they are, because that'd be awesome. All right. So, what would you guys say would be a meaningful way that they could implement the action combat that would feel like it has impact, that would make it feel like it's actually worthwhile in doing, but also just feels fun doing it as well.
Well, if I may,
Sure.
the first thing that I come across is from a technical standpoint is like looking at that video. This is something I know a lot of people, praise that, it looks so good compared to what it used to be. And a lot of I have some friends that say, oh, that looks garbage compared to some of these other games that are already finished. But you got to realize those games have been out for like 5-6 years and they're still in development. And combat was just a placeholder until now. Now is the testing phase where they're going to actually work on that combat. So they haven't touched it yet. And it looks pretty good. It just needs polishing. The animation, some of them are a little sluggish. Some of the things like the dodge roll. These are all things that they need to, I'm sure that they're going to be working on. And it has a lot of promise. The other thing is they shouldn't tie it to frame data. Like, to be more specific, like in Black Desert, they just recently changed this with the remastered patch. Your animations, your frame animations for combos and cancels was directly tied to how many frames per second your computer was drawing.
Oh, God.
So if you're running the game at 60 frames a second versus somebody who's running at 120 or 144, he can get his moves out quicker than you can get yours out. And that's more DPS, and they shouldn't tie it if they, are implementing, combat action.
Yeah. All right, Sam, what about you, man?
I agree. A lot of that, what he was just saying at the end there, makes a lot of sense. They can't tie your combos and stuff to FPS because everybody's going to fluctuate. And that's going to make it frustrating for the people. Because I think Steven said, I don't want to quote him, but I think he said he wants this game to be able to run on a 5-year-old machine. And 5-year-old machine is not going to pump out as much DPS, or as much, not DPS, but FPS as one of our rigs. As like one of the newer rigs. So it's that if they tie the animations to FPS, that's gonna affect a lot of people. And it's gonna make a lot of people not enjoy it strictly for that fact. But also animations themselves. From what I saw in the video itself, a lot of those animations seemed like a little drawn out. Like they didn't need to be as accentuated as they were, because it makes the animation go longer, so it's harder to tell when that hit actually occurs. And then when they do it in a combo, some tend to over accentuate every motion, making the entire combo itself and sometimes 1 or 2 seconds longer than it really needs to be, which in PvP can be life or death.
Oh, for sure.
So, that's very true.
So I don't like to see, like, the dodge roll, for example, is the character whooshed its arms out, curled up into a ball, and then stood back up, and then he started running. It was, granted, it is their first pass at it, and it's totally not finished yet, and I expect it to be improved, and it probably will be. But it's just something that needs to be pointed out in case Steven's watching, or Jeff.
The cleave, the double hand. That was another one that got me. It's the guy with the two-handed sword.
Two-hand weapons are huge for that. They always whoa, it's a giant weapon, but we're superheroes basically.
Well, to be fair, there's magic, so
we're magic.
Now,
I'd also like to see him hit him with the pommel. After a swing, you should be able to hit the other side, You
should. That. Now, it would be kind of nice in that case where, like, let's say if you choose to be a more nimble character, where you're using like a rapier or like a short sword or something like that, where that, you have that mobility because you're not carrying this heavy, meat cleaver thing. If you could
chopper.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you could just like backstep, and in that backstep, if you had like an iframe for a second, that alone in the action combat sense would be a pretty awesome technique against someone who is a very heavy hitting, person that's just me swinging this large axe, rather than having to dodge and roll and then go way outside and then you have to come back in. I mean, that doesn't help you at all. Right. But having that timing down, that skill down, that would be nice. I mean, something that one of my favorite games, it's not an MMO, but it's an RPG. Dark Souls did really well in Dark Souls 2. They had that iframe on the backstep. Dark Souls 3, unfortunately, didn't have that, and you had to change up the meta to where now heavy weapons are dominating in that sense.
Oh yeah.
Hmm. So in that case, I would like to see something like that where you have a little bit of variety, not only with like the weapon types, but also with the movement types.
Right.
One thing that a lot of people were commenting on was the weight of actions. So like, if you hit someone, if there was like an animation that made it look like it actually had an impact, that would be nice to an extent. I don't think it's absolutely necessary. It would definitely feel a lot better, but in a very chaotic situation where, let's say you have like 50, 100 people all fighting it out, you're not going to notice that. And in fact, it might slow you down. So you may not want that.
Especially if they put a sound clip with it to where when you get hit, you go, imagine 300 people going,
Yeah.
Yeah.
All of us in the arena just back and forth with O's.
Oh, goodness.
But
So let's not do that.
On your, the heavy weapons in the Dark Soul, like you were talking about, like the iframe, that coming from Street Fighter, that's my thing. Like that big heavy hit, people, you do a heavy hit, which is like a 35 frame, like, haymaker versus like somebody with a finesse weapon, that 3-frame jab. And, a lot of them don't understand why a light attack that's 3 frames is going to beat that heavy swing, because that active frame of when it actually hits you, you get interrupted, and things like that would be awesome if they implemented it, but they would have to balance, the heavy weapon being able to do those light attacks, like a poke or a jab, something,
No,
so that way you can mix it up.
I want to cut in. Sorry, from the from our tab targeting point of view, back in the day, did you play WoW back in the day?
I did, yeah.
We all
You remember?
Yep.
Remember, weapon speed used to matter.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Remember, a lot of people forgot that back in the day, the speed of your weapon used to matter.
Yeah.
So they need to take that into effect going into an action combat system where I think weapons should have a speed rating or something along that lines of how long the swing takes or something like that. Maybe it can be modified through blacksmithing or enchanting.
Yes, I like that.
Like Star Wars Galaxies with the vibro knuckler. The speed matter. You get a slicer to slice it, and it would be a lot faster. Yeah, man.
And if you play EQ2 today, like I do, weapon speed in that game still matters. So the speed of your weapon, unless you have your perfect 2.0 epic weapon, but unless you have that, your speed of your weapon still matters.
Yeah.
And if you're a tank, you want a fast weapon, so you can be hitting faster. But if you're say a mage, the speed of your weapon really doesn't matter all that much. So it's going to be interesting to see how they balance that as well, to cast times versus physical weapon swings.
I agree, man. I mean, that on its own would actually be an awesome system to implement for crafters, because it makes crafters actually important, which, I mean, for that, I mean, you never hear about a crafter saying, hey, I actually mattered to this guy that was in this PvP fight. Like I made his weapons. Like you never hear about that anymore in an MMO.
Yeah.
So
they don't make it. I don't. If you guys know an MMO that does this, I can't think of one off the top of my head. But
Star Wars.
But one that's still running.
Sorry.
An MMO that's still running, that where you can like take your like one of your raid weapons, for example. Like if I walked into a raid, got a nice weapon, but I didn't like some of the stats on it. If I could walk over, hand it to a crafter, and they could alter it, maybe at a random chance, or the more materials they use, the better chance they get to change certain stats or whatever, and have the ability to modify things to that degree. Would be super nice.
Oh yeah. I think even with just like the material system that they have for the raids, like having like a certain quality materials, like getting like, like let's say C through S class materials, right? Like with S being the best, right? Like
Right.
if you could find raid materials that were S class, that'd be something to grind for at that point. Because then, like let's say it's like a 1 in 100 raid drop, like that's worth farming for at that point.
Oh
Because you
yeah.
want that like smile, like that minute little difference to be able to bring to a crafter to be able to get that weapon to the next level. Um,
And sorry to cut you off.
yeah.
Sorry. But what I hope to see too, to lead off of what you just said, is if I bring a certain set of rare crafting materials to a crafter to make a certain kind of weapon,
Mhm.
they should then get some kind of bonus for making that weapon as
Oh, yeah.
well. Like it should have their name on the tooltip.
Yeah,
things
exactly.
Oh,
like
yeah.
that. And it
They
should,
could know
and
that's
like
the best crafter.
I think there's another MMO that does it where when you craft a certain like high ranking or you get a certain high item, it announces it to the whole server.
Yeah.
So if you make something crazy like that, I think that would be a cool system to see.
Yeah,
would
that
be.
would be.
Oh yeah, I'd love that, man. I mean, even from like a perspective of like, let's say, you could put on your store stall, like, because there will be actually merchant stalls in the nodes that you will be able to set up and rent. Now, let's say if you could put on there like the the quality level of gear that you can create. You could put on there like, hey, I'm an S class crafter, like master crafter. I've built these weapons before. Like people will then come to you and be able to sell like off the bat, this is the best guy to go to for this. Like it
Yeah.
actually brings some emphasis to it.
All right, so as an example, we were talking about this game a little bit before the podcast started. I play a game on the side called Project Gorgon.
Yeah.
And Project Gorgon, in this game, I got to shout the game out because it's so good. Check it out. But they don't have an auction house in this game. It's all player shop stalls like this. And it's a building setup with NPCs. How this game does it is it's a building setup with NPCs, and you can walk up to it and talk to them, buy their shop stall, but basically, and sell whatever you want out of it. You can name the shop whatever you want, and the names float above so you can see them. And they have these golems that walk around. You talk to the golem, type in the specific item you're looking for, and it tells you what shops you're selling it and
That's
at what
pretty cool.
price. So they could jump off of that and make that system better.
Mm-hmm.
I agree,
But
man.
they've already taken steps to make a system that sounds a little better than that.
It does. It sounds honestly like the old school Star Wars Galaxies. That's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah, a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. But we're a little off track. Let's get back on to
Hello?
a little bit. We went off into the merchant realm there.
Tangents
all right.
are fun.
So we're going to get into the second portion of combat for Ashes of Creation, which, is tap target. So since Saint, this is kind of your expertise, is your area that you love. I'm going to let you start off. What games have you played a tap target system that you've absolutely enjoyed, you've loved, and why did you enjoy it in that system? You're not talking, man. You're muted.
Sorry about that. Yeah. So I'll start off by listing because there's too many to individually talk about. Because I'll sum it up. If it's a tab target MMO, I've played it.
Oh yeah.
If it's on there, I've played it. I promise you, I've at least tried it. Anarchy Online, tried it. I did not like it. I couldn't play it for very long. And if you've played Anarchy Online, you probably know why. Star Trek Online had a really nice, simple tab targeting system. It was simple. It was effective. It wasn't anything special though. EverQuest 1 was very tab target, but the tab targeting in the EverQuest franchise, the problem with tab targeting is you can tab target and target everything. It's not just monsters. It tab targets harvestables, players, NPCs. So it's not very effective because in combat scenarios in EverQuest 2 or EverQuest 1, you're surrounded by all sorts of things. Yeah. Harvestables are everywhere, all sorts of different monsters maybe you don't want to pull. So every once in a while, you'll get a trigger happy wizard who will tab too far to one side and throw his fireball at something and pull half of a room.
Yeah.
So tab targeting is, for most people, it feels old-fashioned or out of place because action combat is more fun and more engaging, which I agree. To a point, I agree with that. And for me, and I still play them, so this is a fact. If you with old MMOs like EQ2, World of Warcraft, uh, Ultima, all these some of these old games, mostly in EverQuest, you had a lot of action bars. You had, I had 8 usually, with different spells and abilities and all sorts of things, and that flusters people. People come into my stream all the time and go, "What is that cluster mess of spells?" To me, it's completely 100% organized, and I know what every one of those buttons does.
Yeah.
Well, when you start from level 1.
Yeah. But the problem that EverQuest 2 did, and EverQuest 2 did, is EverQuest 2 sells in their shop a level 100 character boost. So what is going on is new players are leveling to 100, getting all these spells, and don't know what to do with them. Because this game came out in 2004. We were all tab targeting back then. So EverQuest is a really good example because it's the one I play every day, so it's the one I use the best. It really doesn't have a good tab targeting system in hindsight looking at it, because it lets you target everything. But like for Ashes, a good thing that they could do is have a setting in the menu that lets you could have everything listed with checkboxes. What do you want your tab target to be able to target? Uncheck, 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 uncheck. And you could do it that way. Or have one other MMO with their tab targeting system gives you 3 choices of like the enemy nearest to you in the middle, or enemy side is to either side of the screen, which is an interesting option choice.
Yeah.
I don't know why they did that when center is usually what you want.
Right.
But it was interesting to try it out and see how it went. It didn't go very well, so I wouldn't recommend that, Steven. But other good tab targeting games that I've played, pretty much, World of Warcraft did legitimately, and still does, have a really good tab targeting system. And they've been known for that for a long time. It's, as much as people hate it, I myself don't play anymore. I committed 12 years of my life to it, and I can't do it anymore. Sorry. But their tab targeting system was really good. They didn't, when you're in the middle of a raid situation and you're tabbing through trying to get things, it doesn't waver very much. It usually stays within a certain meter radius. It won't target things past a certain distance. So that could be another option. Setting a distance for your tab target would be something cool to see, like out to like 50 meters or 100 meters, or however far they wanted to. That could be cool. I'm running out of breath.
All right, let's go over to Zoom.
Okay, so I got pros and cons. When it comes to tab targeting, some of the pros, like, because I played World of Warcraft, I played, EVE Online. I would consider that tab targeting. So EVE Online, like, you can essentially tab target, find your guy, and I can focus more on transversal, because your positioning was more important, in relation to where the other guy was when it came to accuracy, the kinds of weapons you were using, distance, all that kind of stuff. And World of Warcraft, same thing in a PvE sense. Like as a mage, like, I just tab target and I can just sit there and spam my spells as a mage, or what, as a rogue. And PvP, like he's saying, like, it's done by distance, so I can, it's target nearest. It goes from, next nearest or around you, and the way it cycles is very, good. It's one of the best tab targetings out there for sure. Like, and especially when you're in like battlegrounds and things like that. And I feel like in relation to action combat, it's very laid back. I don't have to, it's not like I'm playing at 110% all the time, like, Street Fighter, where, I can actually take a mental break and my fingers aren't going to get carpal tunnel, like, so.
I'm not going to have a heart attack.
Yeah, exactly. So you can kind of take it and chill out. And I like that. But on the flip side, some of the downsides to it is when I'm tab targeting, I find, like, especially in Arena for World of Warcraft, my mind goes to, Ret Palady and Rogue, and, played a bunch of different classes, but you almost need macros. Like, I cannot play that game without macroing all my buttons, keybinds, target arena 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or with kick. Like I have different targeting macros that either interrupt or silent or do some kind of function tied to who it's targeting, because that's the difference between doing good in PvP or doing absolutely horrible. And if they don't give us the option to do macros, tab targeting is kind of like not so good for a PvP. Like in a raiding situation, it doesn't matter, but in PvP, I don't have time to tab through the different targets, find a guy I want, then interrupt his 2-second cast time spell. I only have a split second to target that guy and get my interrupt off without a macro. So
I would cut in for PvP or sorry, for PvE. I've been playing a tank for almost 20 years, and I would say macros are super important in PvE and PvP. Because without my targeting and taunt macros, I would not be as good as I am in that sense. When you're playing hardcore endgame raid, you need to be able to, like the interrupts, split second, target that thing and interrupt it, because otherwise everybody's dead. And then you have to restart that whole fight, which usually was 15 to 20 minute fights. So everybody's stress is up here for 15 to 20 minutes. So if one person misses that interrupt because they didn't have a macro or they didn't have it set up right, it's not a good situation. But them not giving us the ability to write macros is going to make tab targeting almost useless.
Well, to an extent, it depends on how they implement it, right? Like, one of the things that I've really enjoyed about tab targeting is it is, in a sense, its own skill set, right? There is a lot that goes into memorizing rotations, memorizing the exact cooldown timers. Because without a macro, like, you don't. If you're trying to do that by just memory, it's very difficult. But for the longest time, I didn't know how to write macros as a kid, until I was a lot older, and I was doing that, and I was still fairly decent. I wasn't the best, but I actually was able to participate in most raids or most PvP sections. But it was difficult. It was not easy to do, and it took a lot of hours to get it right.
Can I highlight the extreme ultra side of this whole thing?
Sure.
Is back in the day when we played EverQuest 1, this wasn't really something that they allowed, but I don't do it anymore, so I'll talk about it. There was a program called MacroQuest, if anyone's ever heard of this program. You could run several different instances of the game off of one keyboard and mouse setup. Basically, is how it worked. But to run a bunch of different characters like that, you needed to have macroing at its finest. It's HTML coding, but in a sense, it's macroing at its purest. And it's hundreds and hundreds of code to run 12 characters. By me pressing number 2, all 12 of them have to do something.
Right.
So that's like the extreme of that. But most people don't. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Now, one thing that I would say is, just from having played Final Fantasy, you guys might know where I'm going with this. Global cooldowns on tab targeting, that can make a game feel very slow, very sluggish.
2 seconds.
Yeah.
It was definitely.
I respect him for it.
It was very much.
I
think the only thing that should do a global cooldown is some kind of silence or some kind of CC effect. Like, other than that.
Yeah. Well, if we had, like, for example, if we had. What's a good one? Let's say like Druid Starfall, for example, one of their big attacks. If I had that with no cooldown, it's just going to be that all day long. I'm not going to have to do anything.
The difference is, though, that with a global cooldown, it basically causes you to not be able to use anything except for like certain types of skills while you're waiting for it, right? Like the individual cooldowns are fine. I don't mind those, but having a 2-second global cooldown on a tab target system, like, God, everything just felt like it was so slow.
Even at endgame, it still felt super slow.
Exactly. I mean, there was like I played a Dragoon, I'm sorry everyone plays that, but it was fun. Went from that to Lancer, right? And so it was an enjoyable experience, but at the same time, like, until I started getting my secondary skills, like, everything was just the slug. It was like very much sluggish. I'd also say, like you guys were saying, when it comes down to it, being able to select your targets without selecting the things way off to the right or way off to the left is super important. Bless Online did a terrible job of that. Oh my
I can't believe
god,
you're talking about this trash heap.
it was a trash heap. It was terrible.
Steam let me refund it.
Yeah, I played it too long. I was trying to, get it to work because I was like, yeah, I spent money on it. I don't want to lose the money. Oh my gosh. So, any kind of like world PvP, like that was a nightmare. Any kind of arena based PvP was a nightmare. Like you couldn't select the person you were trying to select unless you took your mouse and clicked on that person. And that was really hard to do because they're just like running around the entire time. And you're like, what? This is not a good system. Yeah, it was awful. So I would have to say, like, wow, I played a lot of that. I played a lot of that during Cataclysm and Mists of Pandaria. That had a much better system in that sense of being able to actually select the targets you want to select, specifically the people in front of you. That would be really important in that case. Okay, so let's kind of go to this next category here, which is going to be an action combat breakdown of the video that they actually just released, teasing it, kind of showing a little bit of action combat that we're going to be experiencing during Alpha 1. Who wants to go first for that?
Well,
go ahead, Zoom.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask him in relation to what about the video exactly.
So, when specifically the way that they've displayed the combat, the way the camera's set up, the way that things are going to work in that sense, we got to see a lot of very flashy combat, a lot of really high animations. The camera setting was like right behind the right shoulder, for example.
Gross.
Yeah,
I hated it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I hated the camera position.
Yeah,
it was
me
my
too.
biggest peeve. I love it. As long as I can zoom the camera out, I don't care. But give me the option. If the camera is stuck like that, that's going to be a terrible design decision.
Yeah.
That's
I think
gonna
they've
be terrible.
I think they've said that you can zoom out, so that's going to be good. But yeah, the camera position definitely.
Around you.
Oh yeah, if we've got huge scale fights and the camera's that close, all you're going to be able to see is the 6 people around you.
Pretty much.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to be able to, and there should be a setting for max distance also, I believe.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If we can get a setting or a chat command like some games have to extend that camera distance, or just give us far distance right off the bat and give us the ability to adjust it. Because most people, like myself, I will set that as high as it goes and play all the way zoomed out. Because for me, that just feels better.
Yep. Did that. My rogue in Warcraft, I had to be like all around you because you never know like what's coming from behind. It's just important. Like your vision on a battlefield is super important. Exactly. I mean, case in point, look at Dota and Leagues of Legends. The camera control, you don't really have that zoom out ability, and it's your ability to like look around you, that matters a lot. But
Exactly.
It is. It really is. Go ahead.
Another thing about that video is the Ranger. Now, this is one thing that really caught my attention when they said that they have a 3-point hitbox, head, upper body, lower body. And when you see him zoom in and he's getting, a headshot, and I don't know if it was desync or whatever, but like, it looked like, yeah. But what gets me is like, just removing the latency out of the question is a siege situation. So you have this front line, all these people fighting, and these guys can sit back there and get these crazy crit multipliers by headshotting you from a distance. Like it's kind of like this, a whole nother level. Like there's got to be some kind of way you could mitigate that. I don't know if they have a dodge mechanic or some kind of passive thing, or even an alert, like an incoming, like, hey, this arrow's coming at you, kind of, I hate quick time events, so just something, like
DBM.
that.
Well, I don't know if they necessarily need that too, because I'm not sure if they need that though, because it is kind of combining the aspects of like a first-person shooter, in a sense, right? Like where you have.
I don't want this to be a game where nobody wears shoes.
Oh gosh. Oh no.
I'll rage.
But let's think about it for a second, right? You have a single shot. It's basically like a sniper rifle at that point. I don't think they should have an indicator for that because, the fact is that single shot to be able to hit it while you're moving around, if you're actually moving around, that shouldn't be easy to hit. That would be one of those things where you do actually have a skill shot there. And that's something that I personally would love to play as a ranger because, that means that you actually have to aim. Most MMOs, even action combat ones, you're just aiming in that person's direction. Now you have to actually aim for their head, which is a whole nother set of skill. And so those high skill players, man, that's gonna be where you see the really really good people.
That I totally respect that position and get it, but coming from I'm a network systems engineer and penetration tester. I started from when I was like knee high to a grasshopper, hacking Counter-Strike bots, things like that, finding offsets for bones and DLL injection to do the whole thing, and I just see that system getting abused. That's the one thing. From a technical standpoint, I hope they have good network security guys that are gonna get a thing.
And they've talked about their anti-cheat stuff. Well, they haven't disclosed any of it yet, but they said I have it.
Because I'm older now. I don't have time for that shit. If they're not paying me, I'm not doing it. Right. But it's the younger kids that are trying. That to them is the game. It's hacking. How they can explore. A lot of it's not malicious until they release it to other people who they don't respect it because they didn't create it. So they're just willy-nilly being,
That's true. You might get an aimbot in a sense, but
that's the thing that worries me. Other than that,
bots and hacks are always a worry.
Right.
Yeah, like even BDO, the marketplace bots.
Even with a subscription model, China doesn't care. They'll try to get in there and gold spam.
Yeah. Or even with the trial accounts, in World of Warcraft, they have how many times have you heard ZGXSFFY, 7, oh, do you want some gold? Oh my God.
Hey, buddy, you want some gold?
Oh, gosh. It's true, though. It is true. When it comes down to it, there's going to be a couple of things that I think are just system-wise going to help prevent that. Like, Sam was saying, they've mentioned from an early standpoint that they're going to be focusing hard on stopping that. They're going to be focusing hard on stopping people hacking the game. I think they've mentioned that from the ground up, from the first line of netcode, they've been implementing a security system built in with that. So it should, which it won't prevent everything, but it should prevent most, script kids from being able to just get in there.
Exactly. Because I feel like no matter how good the security system is, that even if they make it a point to be extra like battle eye, like that's gonna attract higher skilled people because that to them is a challenge. That's the game. They may get banned and leave it and find something else. But whatever information they find, they release on these little hacker forums, and then people take that and do with it what they will. And the community for that is kind of small. It's definitely not like.
Do we think Ashes would ever get a DDoS attack?
More than likely.
It's possible. I mean, all they got to do is, mitigate it by finding, what IP address is coming in and route that to null. And, that's, I used to work for Sprint, anytime there was a DDoS, it's pretty easy to mitigate unless it's a botnet when you have multiple different IPs and it's coming from everywhere. But something like that takes like a team of people. It's not usually done by a single dude in the basement,
Surrounded by PCs.
Who was it that was fighting with AOC right now? It was like Crowfall or something like that. Like on the Reddit, they always come in and like try to like mess with people. Like I could see them trying to do that, man. It's like they're actually successful. Day of launch, let's try to DDoS them, man.
Oh God.
Whatever. Get out of here.
With great power comes great responsibility.
It does. It really does.
An even bigger headache.
Oh, you say well, grasshopper.
So that is a good point, though. When it comes down to introducing those extra hitboxes, that does give the opportunity for people to specifically target those. I'm hoping it's not.
Weapon?
Yeah,
target bot.
True.
Yeah, he said it was a mesh, you know, a 1-to-1 ratio on the body. So, you know, anywhere on a shoulder, arm, neck, whatever, that's all considered that hitbox.
Yeah.
So if you're telling me if I can swing and it hits him in the head on a melee weapon, it theoretically should be doing the same.
Yeah.
People
That's true.
aiming for the head, man.
And
Yeah.
for that, if I hit you in the side of the head, it doesn't take much. One blow should be a kill if we're getting scientific. But if I hit you in the side of the head, it should do something.
You know, day one of Alpha 1, that's what everyone's going to be testing. All the PvPers are going to get together and start hitting each other.
Yeah.
Where can I hit you? How can I do? That's what I'm gonna pick it apart.
I know.
It's gonna be a video. It's gonna be two dudes.
Oh, yeah.
Going, now you hit me.
Right.
No, you.
I know that's what we're planning to do, and from a perspective of testing everything, that's what we're going to be doing right off the bat. You know, is figuring that out.
I should bet you hit me.
The one thing I hope though, and you know, I know some people, they just buy the testing just because they want to play the game and they don't actually know how to be a tester. Like, you know, you're supposed to find bugs. They want you to break the game, find those exploits so they can patch them and report them. Don't just play the game just for playing it. You know, as a tester, you kind of have that responsibility to get on that forum and be like, hey, I found this, you know. Is it repeatable? Is this something that, you know, is a one-off bug, or is this something that is legitimately needs to be patched? Is there a concern? You know, so that note out there for any testers that are watching.
That's a good note, actually, because it is coming up next month. It's gonna be like third weeks around like the 21st. It's gonna be exciting. I know we have a lot of people that are gonna be ready to play it ourselves. So if you guys are watching and you're interested in joining us for that, even if you don't want to join the guild, you're still welcome to help test it with us. So let's actually move on to the next section here, which is going to be open world PvP. How do you guys envision that working with their hybrid system? Like, what do you guys see as possible tactics arising, possible downfalls or issues? Whoever wants to go first, it looks like Zoom, you're excited for it, man.
This is my bread and butter. I live for this. Like, you know, EVE Online, BDO, like that was... I love open PvP because a lot of the arena systems, a lot of them are balanced, and you know, if you get this gear and you earn it, I feel like you should be able to utilize it in an open world, real world situation, you know. And I like the fact, like a box of chocolates, you never know what you're gonna get. You know, you might completely get reamed in one hit, like, whoa, that guy's badass, so like, I need to get my gear up and get my skill up, you know. Or you might come across, like, you know, somebody that's, you know, relatively even, and you have like a really good fight, and it brings a sense of danger and like a thrill to it, because the fact you don't know, like, what's this guy's gear like, you know, is he a threat to me, those kinds of things. It makes it feel more like real, or like you kind of have like this unspoken, let's say, respect, or like a mutual, like, you know, anytime you see somebody, like, you know, is this gonna be like a fight? Like, you know, I like that feeling. And you know, just also the fact that you drop stuff. I remember old school Galaxies, when you died, you dropped all your crap and you had to walk all the way back to your body, you know, or Ultima Online, you know, so you die and you lose all your...
EverQuest 1 was old school, like used to be like that.
Yeah, SOE, same, yeah. But yeah, so I kind of like the fact that it's gonna add another layer to it, because in EVE, like, you'd have pirates. There would be people that would specifically, you know, pop a warp field. So when you're going through, like, you know, they had these jump gates if you wanted to go to different systems or whatever, and they would park in the middle between two gates. So if you were to just autopilot and it would fly a straight line, catch you in this web, blow you up, and steal all your stuff. You know, that was like a thing. So, you know, I mean, different ships, like I flew interceptors because they're warp immune, and they're like, you know, a fast little single pilot ship rather than like a big one. But things like that about open world, I like the danger to it. It adds another layer of, you know, something. And I found a lot of friends that way too. You know, you're partying out in BDO, like Sawsons used to be like the hot spot for all of this stuff. You get a group
Awesome.
and you go there. Sometimes it's not even really about the grind. You're just there to I hope I pick a fight today. I feel like fighting. I just got this new shiny weapon. I want to use it on somebody.
Going in circle there. I wish somebody would come up and attack me right now.
Yep.
Oh yeah. All right. Sam, what about you, man?
Oh man, that's so good. That's so good. Oh, that's too funny. But yeah, a lot of that made sense to me. I agree with a lot of stuff Zoom says, man. It's pretty awesome. It's pretty awesome. I can't wait to see. The future for this game is just so invigorating and exciting. So we've never had a game like this. We legit have never had a game like this. This is a new thing. It's pretty awesome. But open world PvP for me, I did a lot of WoW open world PvP back in the day. Back in like Burning Crusade was when open world PvP really became fun. Because you'd get out and you'd go to, I was Horde, so you'd go to Honor Hold and just look at all the low levels running around and go,
Oh god.
You were that guy prancing around Stranglethorn Vale, killing all the lobies so they couldn't level.
Until they got their mains. If they showed up with a main, then I was like, all right, now we got a fight going. Because I would try to entice if I killed them a few times and they respawn just over and over again, I'd just like, all right, you're good, I'll leave you alone.
Yeah.
If you would go get somebody and they would immediately like call their guild or go get their main, then it was like, now we got to fight. Now we got to battle.
Bring your guild. My guild's better than your guild. Let's
go. We just call the Ember boys and we're all
breaks out to a big war. Like that's my
Oh man.
When you would walk through Stranglethorn fearing for your life because you see these dudes all over the place just going at it.
Yeah, man.
And like as a low level walking through, so like new players, like 6 months in, when we start getting more new players coming in, they're gonna see these big fights going on. Just be like, oh yeah, shit.
That's gonna be pretty epic, man. I can't wait for that.
And it's gonna be interesting because the PvP they showed in the video anyway didn't seem super. It didn't seem slow, but it didn't seem super fast paced either.
Yeah.
It was very middle groundy.
Seemed kind of like Dark Age of Camelot.
Yeah, very slow, very, but which isn't bad. And it's gonna be interesting to see like how many hits it takes you to hit me in the head to kill me. It's gonna be interesting to see that because we're gonna be. I think we're gonna have level 10 characters in Alpha 1. So it's going to be interesting to see how that works, how much damage is done versus our hit points and defenses and things like that.
Yeah, how much damage mitigation you could have with armor and shields. Is there a block mechanic? Or do you need a shield to block? Can I block with a two-handed sword? Okay, yeah, things like this would be like, very awesome.
Yeah, they've talked about implementing a block mechanic, but they haven't. I don't think they've done it yet. They were talking about doing it with tank. But
yeah, well, I feel like everyone should have some form of block mechanic. BDO, I think most classes do. And a grab, save for like Swerk and maybe like a witch doesn't have that, but I feel like something similar. I'm hoping they lean towards that, But
right.
Hell yeah.
I think that'd be pretty nice. One thing that I'd be keen on with that, at least, is not having a animation that's like hindering you getting out of that block, because that can be a problem. If you're blocking and then all of a sudden you can't get out fast enough to be able to switch back to an attack and counterattack, right? Like that can be a pain in the butt.
Exactly. With the tank, that if they do that with the tank, it needs to be seamless. It needs to be a simple shift of position. That's all it needs to be. He doesn't need to go.
Does that amazingly. Yeah, just boop boop.
Exactly. The other part of it, with the open world combat aspect of things, we're going to be seeing a lot of larger Zergs, especially in the early days when everyone's really close by to each other, running through stuff. But I have no idea how that's going to work with, a tab target system combined with an action combat system, because you're going to have people that could be potentially, just spamming AoE attacks with their action combat, and then you could have people that are sitting on the back line, like an archer on the back line, just spamming his tab target attack on them, because you can't miss with that tab target, right? So it's going to be something we need to see.
Well, they could do with tab targeting. They could do a miss chance
Yeah.
which would make sense. That would help balance out the tab targeting aspect. You'll always have either a stat that improves your to hit, or skills themselves will have a to hit or harder to resist or something along that nature. That would help with that.
Yeah. Maybe some armor that you could wear could basically mitigate that as well. So you have like a resistance to tap target skills specifically. But you could also maybe like, let's say, balance it out by also having armor that's specifically only for direct attacks from action combat too, you know?
Now for tanks specifically, I'm going to be looking stat wise at what defense stats they really kind of go for us. If they're going to do simple breakdowns where it's only 3 or 4 different kinds of defenses, or if they're going to make it in depth where we have like piercing, bludgeoning, crushing, or piercing, bludgeoning, and slashing, and things like that. If they're going to do it that in depth to where, like, for say a certain raid difficulty, a tank will have to have such and such amount of resistances in order to survive. Things like that I like to see more, because if we remember back to like Molten Core, you had to get fire resist gear. So you couldn't wear your fancy stuff. You had to get fire resist gear specifically to do this. So that I liked old systems like that. And that would also change PvP drastically if you introduced like elemental resistances on gear or physical mitigations on gear. That'll be interesting to see.
I mean, the one thing with that though is now you come into a system where it's like rock, paper, scissors. Like whatever gear you're spec'd for can fundamentally change a fight of who you come across, so I mean, in a way, Black Desert was kind of like that with the the evasion, the accuracy, damage resistance, or straight up AP, so you would have these different ways of building. Hybrid wasn't so great, you're like a jack of all trades, master of none, where if you were building like to be evasive, you'd have a lot of damage mitigation, you'd be very dodgy, and accuracy would beat that. But if you came across somebody who is a flat out like tank dude who's sturdy, you hit like a potato and you don't do any damage, so like,
well, and what they could do with that, what they do with that in some action combat games is like, in that scenario where say a rogue is face to face with a tank, say an assassin's face to face with a guardian. And he's like, well, what am I going to do? And the Guardian's charging at it. Well, certain MMOs will, if you stun someone, so if he stuns that tank and that tank is stunned, his defenses drop.
Right.
Which would be a good way to do it too. Just it'll be good to see how they balance it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like he can't parry or block, but he can still dodge.
He's just got his raw armor, basically. That's all he's got.
Armor.
They would do it like D&D, where when you fall prone, you lose your dex and dodge. So when you fall prone, all you've got is your flat AC, and then your shield.
That makes sense. Yeah, I think that'd be a good way of doing it. And considering that they've modeled a lot off of D&D, that might be the way that they go with it too. So we'll have to see.
I'm reading my D&D books.
Yeah, especially if you can physically take up your shield as a tank and like put it in front of you. Yeah, that would make sense. If you're stunned, you can't bring that back up and have that extra defense layer. Right. So that'd be kind of cool. That'd be an interesting way of doing it. From a perspective of siege-based combat, so let's move into that next. And that's going to be one of the main things we're testing here in Alpha 1 is siege mechanics, siege-based combat. One of the things that immediately kind of strike me on that is how they're going to implement, siege gear and siege weaponry. How do you guys think that they should put that into the game, and how do you guys think that should work in that sense?
Well, that's hard. I feel like we all kind of have different outlooks on that.
Yeah.
Because if you look at it, how Guild Wars 2 did it, it worked, but it wasn't like super fancy or anything. It was just it kind of felt like they threw it in and it was there to use, but they didn't really evolve on it at all. So if they did if they had siege weapons as like a craft, like someone who specifically makes siege weapons, that could be something that could be done. That would be really interesting to see. Or how I think Steven said it is in the alpha testing is they will just be placed in the world and we'll be able to use them. That necessarily wouldn't be terrible. If they were just statically placed in the world and we were able to use them, that wouldn't be too bad, as long as they were adjustable to a degree. Like we could turn them side to side, adjust them up and down, because with like trebuchets and stuff, you can do that. Right. So as long as if they were placed stationary as we're going to see them and just able to use, that wouldn't be a terrible thing.
Yeah, but I think there's also crafted siege equipment, if I'm not mistaken. And one of the things that comes to mind, you know, is like Lineage 2 or like Black Desert Online, you know, with their siege mechanics. And, you know, they had these cannons in Black Desert, right? And you'd have cannon, like, dedicated teams that would, you know, be marked to take out the defense structures, like quatches or towers or, you know, things like that. So it'd be very interesting to see different craftable things like that, whether they have different tiers. Like, you know, maybe they have like a mechanical crossbow that fires automatically, or some kind of, you know, that trebuchet firing people. You know, I always talked about this with our little assassin group. I was like, how cool would it be to put a bunch of, you know, a rogue on it and launch them over a wall so you can go in there and sneak in and kill them.
Would fit perfect.
Yeah, you know?
I would fit perfect. Put my shield in front and launch me.
Hey, that actually gives me an idea here.
But to bounce off of Zoom, we do have a good idea here. I like it.
Yeah.
And so an example of what they could do is a crafter could say they're static in the world place. Like I said, a crafter could learn a recipe, know what materials they need, have those materials in their inventory, walk up to this static trebuchet or catapult and change it into what their recipe wants to build.
Or even augment it,
cool.
Get better.
Yeah. So you'd have them statically placed in certain spots to where they'd be strategically placed. These would be good spots to put them already, so we wouldn't have to worry about that in the midst of Russian combat. But we'd be able to change and modify, or even move them only during a siege situation.
That's true. That'd be kind of cool if they could do that.
And it could take a team of, say, 6 people to move a trebuchet, because you would put it up on wheels. We'd each grab a side, and it would take 6 players to move this thing.
That would be cool.
And it would be like an in-siege caravan.
Right.
Yeah, that would be
awesome, man.
I'd love to see something like that. Another thing I was thinking is, rather than having them stationary, do like how Star Wars Galaxies had the zoning rights. You know, you'd have your mayor and whatever, and you'd grant zoning rights to somebody, and they could have permission to build a structure, you know, on the land or whatever, and have your crafter build a structure wherever, you know, what they think that would be tactically relevant to possible siege, you know. That would be an idea.
That'd be pretty awesome, man. I wonder if you could do that like in the real world too, where like, let's say outside of like a castle or outside of a node, like let's say if you build up your own little freehold village, right? If you could put like some defenses around that too, that'd be pretty awesome.
Oh yeah,
that would be my fast. I'd put a trebuchet in my freehold, targeted at the city, and launch myself.
Actually, you know, one of the ways they've said that you can basically win a castle siege is by going into the inner room. It's like in the main keep, and basically holding a spell on this main keep item, right? Like this crystal thing that they have there. As a dwarf, if you're a rogue with extra gear that also has augments for invisibility, could you sneak past everything, go in there, and then perform that spell without ever fighting?
Well, it'll depend on a lot of factors. It'll depend on who's in that room.
Yeah.
Probably the king or whoever, or if there's a head figure, they would be there. They would probably run into a raid group, because I would assume there would be a group of people just standing there waiting.
Oh yeah, be a smart thing to do.
Because during a siege, you're gonna have people who are just sitting there on their keyboards, just waiting, just in case. But where was I? It's gonna depend on who's in the room, the raid group they run into. If NPC guards can see through stealth, or have the ability to see through stealth, and how our abilities to see through stealth will work.
That's true. From what I understand, like you'll see like a shimmer running past you, basically. But that's true. I mean, there is going to be NPC bosses, NPC guards. You'll be able to potentially place those things throughout the castle. So that could be, a whole nother point of strategy as far as, what you're doing to lay out that defense.
If we could augment the guards to see stealth.
Yeah.
This kind of reminds me of Alderac Valley in World of Warcraft. You'd have those different points to take, and it was a very PvE focus, like let's down there, boss, kind of deal.
And if you ran into another group, it was kind of bizarre.
Oh, yeah. All right, so let's move on here. We're going to move into the corruption system since we're running a bit short on time at the moment. So obviously, this whole world is about PvP, about conflict, about, basically having meaningful conflict. That's one of the main pillars of the world. Part of that is to make sure, though, that you don't just go around willy-nilly killing low levels, when you're like max level, right? So they do have a corruption system built into this game that the higher level you are, if you kill someone way lower than you, it's going to basically immediately make you fully corrupted, and then you really have no defensive ability, and you have a bounty put on you on top of that. But there are some risks and rewards. So one of them being is that, as a player, if you're not fighting back, you're going to drop a larger percentage of your resources than you would basically if you actually fought back. So, with that being said, with this corruption system, what do you guys think they should do or shouldn't do with this system? What do you think is going to work, or what do you think is going to not work in making sure PvP at least stays fair, that you're not getting a lot of people just getting ganked?
It's going to be a challenge, I think, because no matter where you go, you're going to get PKers. They don't care what the system is. They're going to kill low levels just because they can. They'll get killed by someone and their bounty will get collected, and then they'll just go out and kill someone again. It's just going to be, you're going to get those players. You're going to get a guild like that. We're going to have at least a few of those guilds that are just gankers. They're going to run around. They're going to find DC targets. They're going to gank them. They're going to get their flag, but the entire guild's flagged. So what do you do in that scenario?
True.
What do you do in a scenario? What do you do in a scenario where you've got a guild of 200 people and they're all flagged? They all have wanteds. What do you do in that when they're steamrolling through the countryside?
Well, see, that's the thing, though. Like, once you become flagged, you physically become weaker as a character. At least that's how their corruption system is working, in the sense how they've described it. You'll be less able to fight back, and if you die on top of that, you can lose your gear. Not just like the resources you have on you, you can actually lose your sword, your armor, the things that you were carrying. So, I mean, some people have said it like, hey, I'll set up an alt, then we'll just have the alt do that and get corrupted. But the moment that alt gets fully corrupted, he's basically useless, until he dies. And I'm not sure how many times you have to die until you become uncorrupted, but...
Or if you go...
but they said... Continue.
Go ahead, Zoom. All right, sorry. If you go to the extreme, if I really wanted to do this and try to manipulate this system, if I really wanted to, what I would do is I would have just to throw it out and have a starting examples. I would set up 3 alts. Or 3 characters. I would have my main 2 alts. Mm-hmm. One of them would just be a bank, which is obviously what a lot of people do. So you have one alt that just carries items. The other one would be the PKer, and then you'd have the main. The main would just farm gear. Once he's full level, doesn't have much to do, he can just farm gear, farm equipment, hold on to it. As long as it's tradable between characters, I can take any gear I get, trade it over to that corrupted tune, and re-gear him out as much as I want.
Yeah, as you should be. I mean, I don't feel like there would be a problem with that. Because you're gonna have...
Yeah, you're gonna get those people.
Yeah, you're gonna have those people, but on the flip side, you're gonna have people that like to fight those people. Like, you're gonna have bounty hunter guilds and people that want to, go around, policing it. I would assume, like, I know I definitely would. Like, like Star Wars Galaxy, I love bounty hunting. That was something that was like really cool. The other thing about to get back on it, the corruption, how you were saying, is there's another way to get rid of it. I do remember Steven saying there's a possibility they might be able to do like a quest, like that might be the thing with the religious side of it, because they had a different nodes, military, scientific, religion. So there might be places you can go and do a quest to get rid of that corruption, which would be kind of nice, and I'd like to see how they implement that. But the system, it really reminds me of Black Desert with their karma system. It's very similar, couple of differences, and I definitely like the way that they're going about it because they give the incentive to fight back. Like, because PvP death is going to result in negative experience, and you also have the stat degradation like that. Corrupt. If you're a combatant, kill non-combatant, the corruption that they receive is more than somebody who fights back. But I feel like the incentive of, hey, I'm still gonna lose experience, still gonna lose my resources, I should fight back, makes it a little better as far as the open world goes. Because in Black Desert, the problem you have is what they call karma bombing. You get guys that, because it's not purely based on level, it's also based on gear difference. So we could both be max level, like level 62, and you go around and you get a troll who's gonna steal your farm, and he's just waiting for you to attack him, and then he hotbars all his gear, face rolls, take it all off, you die in one hit, and then you're instantly negative karma, and now you have to leave because he's gonna take your spot. What are you gonna do? Or they'll just, you get these guys that get really tilted and they think that I own this piece of land. I've been farming here since forever, and they have they're entitled to it. But it's just if you can't hold the spot down, leave.
Exactly.
Just hop a channel. And they'll sit there and they'll keep wasting everybody's time dying over and over and over. I would like to see, some kind of, that's why I'm glad that they're implementing the material loss and a negative experience in PvP death, because I would hate the flip side of that happening. You get these people who want to go around and die, and it's just why? And
right, I didn't even think about that. You're gonna get people who are gonna, what if a low level runs up and starts attacking a high level character just out of nowhere? Aha! What are you gonna do about it?
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, as soon as that character fights back, you don't get corrupted if you kill him. So that's the thing.
Right.
As soon as that happens, you can buy them back and just wipe them off the face of the earth.
Yeah.
But here's where it might actually be a good idea to smurf in this case, where you might just want a low level character to do all your farming and run back with the stuff, because no one that's high level is going to want to attack him and get that corruption. Because as soon as that happens, you can then come in, they're going to be already weakened, and your main character can just destroy him. So you could have a bunch of literally just smurfs just running up and down this hill, farming this resource real quickly, and have your main army just there ready for people that try to attack them.
Yeah.
Black Desert, they have a thing where if you're not level 50, people can't engage you in PvP. So you have a lot of traders who are level 49 because they can't get attacked. You in that game, if you kill somebody who has a carriage full of goods, can't actually steal from them. They just do it just to grief you because they know you're going to lose your materials. But it's not like they're picking them up. They just do it to do it.
True.
So, you have a little smurf, like you're saying, if, say you don't PvP until you're level 10, right? So, I can have a level 9 smurf and not have to worry about it. But I don't know if they're necessarily going to do that. We'd thought.
Yeah. It's gonna be interesting to see. I want to know what they're gonna do, if they're gonna do server caps for account or how many characters you can have per server. Because some games cap you at 2, some games cap you at 12. It's really gonna depend on how many characters we can make.
I need at least 3, man. I need a gatherer, a processor, and a crafter.
Yeah, there are MMOs that cap you with 2 because they don't want people making tons of characters and clogging up the data servers and stuff.
It may come down to how hard it is to level a character as well. You may not be able to easily level, so it could also be a soft cap in that sense.
Well, it's level 20 is the max, and they're going off of D&D, so I'm pretty sure if they stay with that system,
I think 50
then they're gonna. Oh, level 50 is the max.
Level 50 is max. Yeah.
Oh wow! I didn't know that.
For Alpha 1 Phase 2, it will be level 20.
Okay,
for
that's what it was.
Alpha 1 Phase 1, it's going to be level 10.
Okay.
But, yeah, I'm thinking it's going to be actually... Yeah, exactly. You start off at that max. So I'm thinking it's going to be pretty difficult actually to get anywhere in the world.
I'm hoping.
So that way you're not just like instantly leveling up, for like a week of grinding. You're not getting the max level. It's actually going to take some time.
Yeah.
But
If it takes a month, I'd be impressed.
oh yeah, I think that would be a good balance there, to be honest.
Yeah. If it takes a month of casual, couple hours a day play, it takes you a month to get 50. That's not too bad.
Yeah. Even if it takes 90 days, like
6 months,
right?
or
Like
EQ1.
I don't mind that though. I think that's actually good to a certain extent. I mean, people actually care about their characters at that point. They're not just jumping between alts like crazy. Yeah.
I miss that system because in EQ1 it legit used to take people 6 months to level. So when you saw a high level, that was like, wow, you're actually next level.
Oh yeah.
I would like that. Yeah, I remember in Vanilla WoW, it took 16 days of played time to hit level 60, and that's if you were like taking the most efficient route and, following some of these speed levelers, like, that's a lot of time.
Yeah, that's consistent 18 hours a day.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, we're coming up to the end of our show here for today. We still have a lot of other topics we can cover about, PvP in general. But, we only have an hour in show, and I think we're at like an hour and 15 minutes at this point. So we're going to cut off.
We're going to have to extend that show time.
Next time, we're going to do a 3-hour show. It's just going to happen. All right. We're going to do a marathon and get some G Fuel. Yeah. Live stream. All right.
Yeah.
Live stream the next podcast. With G Fuel.
I'll have my shaker cup by then.
Oh, yeah.
We'll have our shaker cups.
All right, guys. So, first of all, thank you all for watching. We're going to go ahead and just end the show here in a second. But before I do that, I'm going to give each of these guys a couple moments to sell themselves, tell you guys where you can find them in the world. Let's start off with Zoom, since you're our guest today. Where can people find you at?
Twitch.tv /ZoomDBZ. I stream Monday through Friday from 7:30 to about 11:30, so about 4 hours a day. I just have a really chill, laid-back stream. I'm a no-stress gamer. Like, you'll catch me playing even Dota 2. Like, you hear, the classic Russians yelling and screaming. I'm just chill, man. I play good tunes. I keep it chill, and I'm just, I'm all about, like, just good vibe, man.
Heck yeah, man. All right. And Saint, where can people find you in the world, man?
You can find me at twitch.tv/SaintNerd. You can find me in twitter.com/SaintNerd1 or Instagram at SaintNerd1. Follow me on all of those. That'd be awesome. And I stream every day except Mondays, usually all night long into the early morning hours. Currently just streaming EverQuest 2 and some other MMO content until we get our hands on Ashes. But come check it out. We listen to metal and we chill.
Good music. I have to say, he has a very awesome taste in music.
Definitely he does. All right, guys. Well, thank you first of all for watching today. I am Sinbad, the leader of Ember. We are an Ashes of Creation guild. We've done a lot to create a lot of content for this game, both on this show and on other shows. We are a PvX guild, so we're going to be focusing on both the economy, the PvE aspects of the game, and the PvP aspects of the game. We also have built up an awesome community as well. We have some of the best members around, in my opinion, at least. Oh, yeah. So if you guys are interested in joining us, if you're interested in checking us out, go to embers.us or come to our Discord. The link will be down below, and check us out. I think you guys will have a great time getting to know us, and we have a pretty overall awesome goal that we're going to be hitting in Alpha 1 and also in the game launch itself. So check us out. For now, though, guys, I'll see you next week, and stay tuned. Thank you.